Now, this is called a spiral. This is called a flat steel. They're both made of steel, and they do not rust. They come in 1/4 inch widths and 1/2 inch widths. And you can order them in 1/2 inch increments. You can also order them on a roll, and they will come in a very long roll. What you do then is that you cut them yourself with a very heavy cutting tool. You file the ends and dip them in something called tipping fluid. This is a lot of trouble as far as I'm concerned. I think it's just easier to order them, but it is possible to do, to cut your own bone lengths. So this is what I really believe is the best. I have some period bones here some antique bones I found, and there's a patent on them from 1889. And these are the type of bones that would have been used to bone a bodice simply because of the outside covering that they have. However, the bones themselves would have been the same, and it almost killed me, but I did cut this apart to look at the bone underneath. It's metal, it's tipped in something that looks like copper, and it is rusting. So if you think you wouldn't be caught dead in a garment with a bone, here we have an underwire from a modern bra. So if you're wearing an underwire bra, you're wearing boning. It even looks quite similar to the 19th century bone. Let's talk about boning tape. This is specially manufactured to hold bones, and it's like a round tube, flat. And this comes in 2 different sizes, 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch to hold your bones. And you would use this if you want to bone a bodice or if you want to do a single layer corset. I have a single layer corset. We're not going to be making one today, but I have a single layer corset from the 1900s, and you can see the boning tape used. Okay, I've just put this piece of thread or this thread on the table to remind myself to tell you, just use polyester wrap thread for strength, nothing special. Let's talk about busks. These are the type of busks that are available today. They come in 1 inch lengths, 12, 13, and this is a 14 inch. About 80% of women will take a 12 inch busk. If you're tall or big, you may need a 13 or a 14. This is what's called a spoon busk. And this was created at the time to put additional steel where the most wear was to be found, which was on your tummy and at your waist. For the bending, that's where if a bust was going to break, it was going to break at the waist, and so they reinforced it. You can get these now, mail order. Let's talk about laces. As I showed you before, you can make your own from a roll, or you can purchase them ready-made. Here's an antique set of laces, and you can see the metal aglet at the end that is really quite similar to the one we've been using. This is called lace beading, and it's useful to put at the top of the corset. If you run lace through it, fix it at one end, then you can draw in the corset with your lace at the top. What's interesting about this is that you can put it at the top of your corset, and that will draw it in if there's any mismatch in the size. In fact, I've got a very small lace beading there, and I can draw the corset in using lace beading, so that's why I mention it. Now here's the waist reinforcement. You can see in this period corset the waist reinforcement. You can see it on this corset. You can see it from the outside, although it's been stitched to the outside of the corset. Let's talk about waist reinforcement. This is twill tape, very, very strong. Doesn't stretch. As opposed to bias tape, which does stretch. Your waist reinforcement should be twill tape, and you bind the top and the bottom of your corset with bias tape. You can purchase it on a roll like this, or at the sewing store, It's called wide single fold or wide bias tape. It's about 1 inch wide without the folds. With the folds, it's 1.5 inches. Okay, let's take a look at grommeting and eyelets. This is a whole section by itself. And I'm going to be demonstrating this. And I'm also very opinionated about this as well. These are eyelets. Eyelets are a one-piece metal reinforcement for your holes. Grommets are two-piece. They have the grommet part and the washer part. I prefer grommets, but I'm going to show you the eyelets in case you decide, because they are very much more available. You can find them in stores. Let me show you how to insert using the different tools. So we're going to be using our hammer. I want to talk about this hammer. It's pretty funny. What you want to find is a hard rubber hammer, not a soft rubber hammer. You don't want to use a steel hammer. A steel hammer will eventually harm your punch and die. So you want a rubber one. But the first rubber one I bought was very spongy. And it was very comical. I would hit it and it would go boing, and nothing would happen. So what you really need is a hard rubber hammer. You can find these in any hardware store, and they come in handy for a lot of different things. So what we do is we take our fabric and we're going to make holes in it with our awl and insert our grommets or our eyelets. And we'll start with eyelets so you can see that. And you just make a hole and put your eyelet in there. And this is this happens a lot. This works so well that oftentimes the hole will close down before you have a chance to put your eyelet in. So you just make the hole a little bigger. Put it in there. Now this is the simplest eyelet insertion tool that there is the one I'm about to show you. It's this. It's just a piece of metal with a point on the end. You place this over the eyelet. Excuse me, let me get my hammer ready. And I'm sure things are going to start to bounce around here when I start hitting, because you really give these things quite a whack. You see that the eyelet has folded down around the fabric. That's how you insert that. This eyelet came in a tool kit, a Dritz kit. Same thing, only I have to make a very large hole. Place the eyelet through the hole. Place this on a hard surface, the tool on top. Strike it with your rubber hammer. I can show you why I don't like eyelets. I didn't do a very good job. It's difficult to do so. But since it's a one piece, it's sort of hit and miss. Also, this is very scratchy. So that's how you insert eyelets. I prefer grommets. And here's a couple of tool and die kits for grommets. First, I want to come in and show you these scissor tools. I don't like scissor tools because I find my hand gets tired. Some people swear by them. You can also insert eyelets with scissor tools like this. I prefer punch and die like this. This is a kit that I bought at the local hardware store. And it comes with a little piece of wood, which is very cute. It's called a grommet kit. And these are size 0 grommets. It also comes with a hole cutter. You don't want to use a hole cutter for the reasons I've described before. But if price is an issue, you get the tool and die, the punch and the die, and you get the grommets and the whole thing for $9. So that's what it's got going for it. So again, I'll make the hole with it has to be a very big hole for such a big grommet. Compare the size here. This is a 0, 0, and this is a 0. I prefer these. Put the grommet through there. Place the grommet on the die. Place the washer on top. Put the punch. I'm going to put this back up here on the wood so I can strike it. That's what it looks like. The problem I have with this is that these have such a tall shank that it doesn't grip the fabric tightly. Perhaps you can see that it stands away from the fabric. This grommet spins in the hole. That's why I don't like these as much. However, they're a good, cheap solution. For more money, this punch and die kit will cost you $40, but you can get the 00 size, which is smaller, and I prefer it. Make your hole. Put the grommet on the die. Place the washer on top. You know, there's something going on here. Let me try it again. There you have it. Smooth, and it's got a real tight grip on the fabric. This is the size I prefer. Now here's my hand press. This is very easy to use. Unlike the punch and die, it's opposite. The die is here, the punch is here. So once again, make the hole in the fabric. Put the grommet through it. But in this case, it's opposite. So the washer goes here, and the grommet goes there. And with very little effort, simply stamp it. You come out with a perfect grommet every time. Okay, we've discussed the unique construction techniques that corsetry requires that is a little bit different than modern sewing. Let's talk about fit. The first thing you're going to do is cut a fitting muslin. But what size? You want to take a look at the proportions that you're looking for. As we've talked about before, you want it to come up to the mid-bust. You want to think about whether you want to reduce your waist. Most people reduce only just a little bit. If you're a tight lacer, some people think a 4-inch is the maximum unless you've been training. And the length should be mid-hip. If it's too long, you can't sit down comfortably. So take a look at the measurements at the back of the package and choose the one that is closest to your size. Bust, waist, and hip. These measurements are for a B cup. If your waist, for instance, if you have a 26.5 waist, but your bust is bigger than 34, cut the C cup. If it's even bigger than that, cut the D cup. When in doubt, cut the biggest size because you can take it in. You can't let it out as easily. So pick your size and cut out your fitting muslin. Here's a picture of the pattern pieces of the Victorian corset. The B cup, you want pieces 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in your size. For the fitting muslin, you'll extend the back by 1 inch. That will enable you to sew the corset, the fitting muslin, together in the back so you have something to grab onto. Otherwise, it's 2 pieces of fabric and it would be hard to fit. This is if you're a B cup. If you're a little bigger than that, instead of 1 and 2, you'll use 6 and 7. If your bust to waist ratio is even larger, you'll cut out the 8 and the 9. And then sew your fitting muslin together. This is what it will look like. Now I'd like to put the Silverado corset up, pattern pieces up, and we'll show you the same thing. Here's the same thing in the Silverado corset, which is the bust gore corset. You can see by comparing the two that this has a lot more pattern pieces. So if it's your first corset, I often encourage people to make the doré. It's just simpler to sew and simpler to fit. If you want to make this corset, the difference between it and the doorway is mainly that it's a very long corset, but you can cut this off any length you wish. The way the fitting muslin would be cut with this is you would cut out all these pieces in your size. Everybody cuts the 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and you extend the center back 1 inch so you can sew it together in the back. And then you choose your bust gore inserts, which go here and here. If you're using a B cup, you use piece 17. A C is piece 18, so you'll cut those. And a D is piece 19. If I can compare these two, you can see that they're bigger, so it accommodates a bigger bust. There is an eccentricity about this pattern that I'll explain to you. When large women make this pattern, they take a look at their modern bra size, and it may be something like double E, and they may think that they need a large bust gore. But the truth is, what happens, because of the way this is graded, the larger size corsets can accommodate just the corset alone a larger bust. So you will be using a smaller bust gore, and that seems contradictory. The way I explain it to people is if you have a large bust to waist ratio, and you're built like Dolly Parton, then you'll use a large bust gore. If you're built like Rosie O'Donnell, you'll use a smaller bust gore. You cut these out and make your fitting muslin. Now you're going to cut the pattern. And I've got a board here that shows the way the pattern actually looks. And it's been graded, because it's graded in so many sizes, it can be very confusing. So I encourage people to find their size and mark it in red ink. For instance, if you're a size 20, mark it in red ink. Then you can either copy this off to make your fitting muslin or go ahead and cut it. If you're a 14, say, you're a different size on top than bottom, you can go ahead and mark the 14 on top and say you're an 18 on the bottom, mark the 18, and then blend at the waist. It's usually pretty obvious where the waist is. So you make up your fitting muslin, and as I said, they look like this. Now let's do some fitting on some live models. So you've made your fitting muslin, and you're going to try it on. I have to thank my stalwart models. I have some live models to show you how to fit your fitting muslin. Now, these are the fitting muslins I've made. I've made every single size of the Dory corset in the D cup. And this is what I use to fit people with. You're going to use your own fitting muslin. And I can kind of cheat because I've been doing this so long, I can basically take a look at somebody and guess pretty close what size they are. Here's the 14. We're going to try this on Roz. You can see the fitting muslin, it's closed in the back, and I've got a little extra in the front so I can grab it and look at it. The first thing you do is ask your model, is that at your waist?
It's a little high.
A little high. Because they know where their waist is, you don't. We're going to take this like this and then bring it up like that. And this is the 14D. And though this method may seem inexact, it works a lot better than you think it might. Now this, I would say, depending on the squish factor of your model, this is probably a little too big for Roz. And I would put her, let's try the 12. Sometimes I put these on people upside down, which is kind of funny when that happens. And now I'm going to grab this in. Now that's probably more like it for Roz. Now what do you want to look at for the fitting points? Is the waist too tight? That's what you want. Does it come up over her bust? You want that. Now, technically, the Victorian corsets ended at mid-bust. However, you want to make sure it's a little longer on the top. And the reason for that is you can always cut a corset off at the top, but you cannot add on. And the more you tight lace, the tendency is for the corset to droop. So you want to make sure that it's very high in the front, or over the bust. Then you take a look and make sure it's going to be comfortable under her arm. And does it fit? And we'll take a look at the back just a little bit. We want to make sure that this comes up, but not too high on her. Is that comfortable, or do you think that's a little too high?
A little too high.
Yeah, I think it's probably not at your waist. Yeah, there, that's more like it. Now what you want to do here is take a look at the wrinkles. Now once she has bones in her corset, these wrinkles, most of them will go away. But if they're severe, they'll give you an idea about fitting. Now, she's a little bit more curvy than the corset is. When we get to the last fitting step, she may want to let this out just a little bit. But those are the things you look for. Is it comfortable in the back, comfortable around the arms, and high enough in the front? So I would tell Roz to make the 12D just like it is. And I think it would fit her. So what I'm going to do, what happens in classes is that I talk fast and I'm moving around a lot, and I'll tell people what I want them to do, and between that then and going back to sit down, they can forget. So I've come to write this down. It's a 12D and no other alterations. Thank you. Okay, next please. Okay, we're going to you're a little skinny thing. We're going to start with a 12, but I know it's much too big. You can see how I can really draw that in. We're going to take her down to a 10 at least. I don't know, let's go to the 8. Now, I want to settle this on your waist. Is that at your waist?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep, that looks like it. Now, she's an 8, but you see how short this is on her? And that can happen if, like this beautiful young lady, she's tall but thin. And so this is going to be too short. So what I would tell her, and I'm looking at this and it's too tight around her waist, which is what you want in a corset. Gorgeous hair. I would say that it's okay in the back. It looks like it's going to fit her pretty well. And you notice I'm fitting right over their clothing and their foundations. It's perfectly okay. But in the front, it's going to be too short, especially if she tight laces. It's going to come down and not be tall enough in the front. So for you, you're going to cut the 8D. When in doubt, cut the D, because you can always take it in. Lengthen the top front, I would say, an inch. And later in the video, I'll be demonstrating what it means to lengthen just the front. And if that turns out to be too long, you can always cut it off. There you go, sweetie. Now I'm going to guess 18. Probably might be too small. They are floppy. You've got to wrestle them a bit. And we want to see, because I want to see what her squish factor is. 18 is too small. Let's go up 1. I spend half my time looking for the right size, but I haven't figured out a better way to do it. Now this is a 20. I end up manhandling my models quite a bit, actually. Now with her squish factor, I would say that she's a 20, because she can tight lace that down. And we want to make sure it's, tight around the waist. We're going to take a look at this. And she's a little short-waisted. So I'm looking at this, and this might be, of course, she's got her blouse on. Let me settle that around your waist so I can check under the arms again. Is that your waist?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. On second thought, I think it's going to be, no, it's probably too long. So what I'm going to tell you to do, once you get bones in there, that's going to be pretty darn uncomfortable. We're going to cut the 20D. Let me look at your back. It's too long for her. Can you see how that's going to roll over and be very, very uncomfortable? This is okay, I think. But I'm going to tell you to cut the 20D. And shorten the corset. There's going to be a shorten lengthen line. And you're going to cut that corset and shorten it. I'd say an inch. Let's make it 3/4 because you can always cut it off. Okay. But I don't want you to cut it off in the beginning because you'll end up cutting off too much of the curve in the front.
Okay.
Shorten the whole corset 3/4.
Okay.
The rest of it looks good. Great. Okay, probably 12. Is that your waist again?
Mm-hmm.
She looks like a perfect 12 to me. 12D. She might be a little curvier than the corset in the back. You can see it wrinkling up. It doesn't want to lay flat. She may want it to let out these two seams just a little bit, maybe a quarter each. But other than that, it looks like it's a pretty good fit. Okay, is that what you made the last time?
I don't remember.
Okay. I think that's a pretty good fit. Okay. I'm pretty good at guessing, but if you are new to this and you don't, you basically, you start with the person's measurements and you would measure them to guess what size they were. What I'm looking for, well, what I'm looking for is the 16. Let me find that.